Hello, my name is Michelle McCoy, and I'm an archivist here at Harold Washington Library Center. In this year's One Book, One Chicago selection, Bedrock Faith by Eric Charles May, readers are immersed in the fictional neighborhood of Parkland on Chicago's far southwest side. In depicting his character's strong relationship to Parkland, May examines what it means to be part of a neighborhood community. Chicago is often called a city of neighborhoods. The city officially recognizes 77 community areas, but the number rises to around 178 if you add in the neighborhoods within each of those areas. When mapped, this geographic footprint looks a bit like a patchwork quilt. Community names like Uptown, Lawndale, Hyde Park, or Pullman have become a shorthand for identifying an area within the city. But how did it get to be that way? From its inception, Chicago grew by annexing smaller towns and suburbs around it. Once incorporated, these former villages, with their various cultural and ethnic enclaves, retained their unique identities within the larger municipality. Parkland's fictional history was likely inspired by the very real events that played out in the far southwest side community of Morgan Park in the same era. As in Bedrock Faith, the debate over whether to join Chicago sparked a brawl on the stairs of Blake Hall that stands adjacent to the Baptist Church. Morgan Park was named after Thomas Morgan, an early English settler. The community's winding streets, small parks, and roundabouts were laid out in the 1870s by Thomas F. Nichols and were meant to look like an English country town. The community also had its origins as a Baptist enclave. The Morgan Park Baptist Church opened in 1874, and the community officially prohibited the sale of alcohol in 1882, when it was officially incorporated as a village. Most of the residents at that time were white, middle class, and Protestant. However, a small population of blacks resided in a segregated district east of Vincennes Avenue, near the main line of the Rock Island Railroad, and a Catholic community settled in west of Western Avenue. The village of Morgan Park first considered annexation to Chicago in 1894. The proposition was defeated 3-1. Annexation was not an easy decision. Residents of the village would debate the issue for the next 17 years and vote on it 5 times more. Each side employed propaganda cards and cartoons. In Bedrock Faith, residents formed a block club to address neighborhood problems collectively. Similarly, Morgan Park village neighbors formed organizations to promote their positions for and against annexation. These were known as the Annexation League and the Home Rule Association. In 1910, the Home Rulers invited the annexationists to a debate. The response by the annexationists included some oppositional bluster. In our opinion, the time for joint public debate is long past, to which they added that annexation is a condition and not a theory. The issues, however, were very real and included the provision of important public services. Residents wrote these points out for the purposes of their 1911 debate. So why annex? What does that mean for Chicago, for the villagers of Morgan Park? With annexation, Chicago got to expand its boundaries as well as its tax base, although not all Chicagoans were happy about that, as seen in this advertisement. The smaller community got to take advantage of the larger systems that could help administer its schools and libraries and other government services like road maintenance, garbage collection, and especially access to clean water. Many of these services had become too expensive for the smaller communities to provide. Seems like a win-win, so why did some community members not want to be annexed? Opponents to annexation questioned why Morgan Parkers should pay taxes for subways across town. Further, the Home Rulers believed that along with big city services came big city vices. Many of these arguments cited the fear that saloons and houses of ill repute would take over their storefronts. There was also a general resistance to losing autonomy and independence. Annexation was almost always decided by a vote of the members of the community to be annexed. Many suburbs existing today, Evanston, Oak Park, and Blue Island, to name a few, voted against being annexed into Chicago in the past. Local organizations prepared sample ballots to encourage particular outcomes. The sixth vote to annex Morgan Park to Chicago was on April 4th, 1911. The annexationists won by 31 votes out of 851 voters. Chicago patrolmen arrived in the village the next day to provide its first city services, but the story was far from finished. The Home Rulers challenged the vote in court, first by a technicality of the ballot and later over a narrow strip of 200 acres between Morgan Park and Chicago that did not belong to either village or city. They argued the no man's land would become a lawless zone. Judge Charles M. Walker nullified the annexation vote on the grounds that the village did not meet the adjacent land requirements. The strip of land is represented here to the right of Morgan Park in blue with diagonals. In 1913, Illinois legislation amended how such parcels of land were addressed. Nevertheless, the bitter disputes continued, and the legal decision held until April 21st, 1914, when one last vote by both the residents of Morgan Park as well as the residents of Chicago secured agreement on both sides and made annexation permanent. At long last, the protracted battle was finished. The Morgan Park Board of Trustees met for the last time. Community newspapers, however, continued to report on destroyed friendships. Just as in Parkland, Morgan Park continued to exist as a distinct neighborhood within the city. Since annexation, blocks have been filled with residents and the demographics have changed. Today, the neighborhood is now majority Black. Please stay tuned as my colleagues, Beverly Cook and Beth Locke, will pick up the neighborhood's story decades later with the Morgan Park Credit Union. We hope you enjoyed part one of this video series. We invite you to visit Special Collections and find your own neighborhood story.
Hello, my name is Beverly Cook.
And I'm Beth Locke. We're both archivists at the Chicago Public Library's Vivian G. Research Collection of Afro-American History and Literature.
This repository is located at the Woodson Regional Library, which is located at 9525 South Halsted. We document the African American experience in Chicago and the greater Midwest.
This year's One Book, One Chicago selection from the Chicago Public Library is Bedrock Faith by Eric Charles May. The novel centers on the residents of Parkland, a fictitious Black middle-class neighborhood on Chicago's far south side.
Many of our archival collections in our repository showcase the themes of connection and community.
Today, I would like to share the history of the Morgan Park Credit Union. This credit union is the oldest African American credit union in Chicago. The business emphasized the importance of community involvement in education and economic growth of a neighborhood. Let's take a closer look at its history. On September 17, 1940, residents of the Morgan Park community organized the Morgan Park Community Consumers Cooperative. The credit union's name was changed to Morgan Park Co-op Credit Union on April 24, 1949, and then in 1989, the name was changed again to Morgan Park Credit Union. This is the credit union's Articles of Incorporation from 1940. It lists 84 members of the credit union and all of its shareholders. We also have their bylaws amendment, signed on April 25, 1949. The article concerning membership was amended, stating the new geographic boundaries that their membership must reside. Morgan Park was annexed in 1914 and became part of Chicago's 32nd Ward with 4 precincts. Morgan Park was originally part of the Washington Heights community, but the continuing influx of African Americans gave rise to a dividing line along Vincennes Avenue. The majority of African Americans lived east of Vincennes, while white residents occupied the west side of the dividing line. The credit union cooperative was founded by 22 people, mostly civil service employees. The first office was mobile. Their treasurer, Carl Carter, went door to door taking care of credit union business. Within 5 years, its membership had grown to over 300 people. The original site was a church basement on 111th and Bishop, where it operated for 15 years. Then the organization purchased land and built a new site at 11043 Vincennes Avenue in November 1955, sharing their space with the new Jack L. Cooper Medical Center. The newspaper article describes the opening of the new Morgan Park Co-op Credit Union building in 1955. E.M. May, the treasurer and general manager, said in a 1955 interview that the Morgan Park Credit Union was the only community-type credit union in Chicago that owned its own building and had built its headquarters from the ground up. The credit union was community-based and well-organized. It had a membership committee, credit community, treasurer, education committee, nominating committee, and family counselors on the medical side of the building. While giving traditional loans to the community, members were also able to get loans for debt consolidations, vacations, tuition, home remodeling, and automobiles. On March 31st, 1995, the Morgan Park Credit Union celebrated 55 years of service to the community. Here's their 55th anniversary and annual meeting program from that year. The credit union made its last move in 1989 to 111th and Longwood Drive, where it stayed until it merged with Credit Union 1 in 2001. The collection's donor, Rose Given Blair, was vice chair of Morgan Park Credit Union during its merger with Credit Union 1 and worked with the union for over 16 years.
Washington Heights Civic Organization was a member of the Organization for Southwest Communities Areas. It was organized in 1966 to serve the residents in southern part of the Washington Heights neighborhood. This organization does not include the northern half of the area designated Washington Heights because the Dan Ryan Expressway became the unofficial barrier between the white and African American communities. The Organization for the Southwest Community was composed of 17 civic and homeowner organizations, tenant associations, churches, local businesses, and individual block clubs located between 79th and 119th Street, South and North, State and Ashland, East and West. It was organized in 1959 by the Industrial Area Foundation to provide an opportunity for the community's residents to unite and solve problems of blight, declining business districts, inadequate education and recreation facilities, and to improve basic city services. What most people don't realize is that it grew out of Sela Linsky's Back of the Yards Neighborhood Council, our modern template for community organizing. This organization worked closely with the churches in the area along the community business and neighborhood concerns. It participated with several block clubs aligned in its geographic area and held both a community-based newsletter and an organizational newsletter. The community-based newsletter stated its mission in working to keep the community clean and safe for its residents. The Washington Heights Community Organization had a strong community support and activist base. They started petitioning for a stop-and-go light on the corner of 101st and Halsted back in 1967, but it was not until the 1970s that the city finally complied. The community also sponsored a Washington Heights Citizen Patrol in 1972. The Greater Roseland Organization sponsored a health fair at Mendel High School, and the Washington Heights Community Organization served in several capacities as volunteers, greeters, and drivers. The Mount Vernon Washington Heights Civic Organization banded together to fight off City Hall on its proposed Crosstown Expressway during Mayor Belandic's and Daley's era. Their mandate was that the lost costs to the communities and homes, along with tax revenue, would outweigh any good this proposed project would bring, since there was no mention of any business or industrial aims accompanying it. Mayor Richard Daley's death in 1976 and the new urban plans for the city put to rest the proposed Crosstown Expressway. Starting before 1967, the community had been complaining about the overcrowded conditions at Mount Vernon and Fernwood schools. Mount Vernon had 14 mobile units, while Fernwood had 23 units, which took up the children's playground. These units were the Willis wagons, which were portable school classrooms used to alleviate the overcrowded schools in black neighborhoods during Superintendent Benjamin C. Willis' tenure. Instead of building new schools or allowing black children to enroll in white schools that had empty seats, the new proposed elementary school was to be situated at 103rd Street and will be called the No Name School at 103rd. The community wrote and had meetings with the school board to be part of the naming process, but the school board said no to their choice of Nat Turner and Marcus Garvey. The Battle of Wills went on for several years while the school was being built. Its official dedication was in 1974. In the late 1960s, Washington Heights had been petitioning for a library for their community. The proposed site had been 95th and Halsted. The OSC, Organization for Southwest Community, complained bitterly when the city rejected their site and wanted to know why. The Chicago Public Library sent a letter telling them that they had heard their cries, and as soon as they had money and as soon as they finished the testing of the site, they would be building them a new library. I hope you've enjoyed learning more about the Morgan Park and Washington Heights neighborhoods today. We've discussed just two of the over 240 archival collections housed in the Vivian G. Research Collection.
Archival collections are available to view 5 days a week by appointment only. Please visit shipublib.org, the Vivian G. Harsh Research Collection webpage, to make an appointment. And staff is always happy to talk to potential researchers over the phone or email, so just contact us.